Randy, you and your introducer come up here. Randy Powell was the fullback, but he might have been the forgotten man for his first 2 years in high school, first 2 years on the varsity, because the halfbacks were Jeff Beck and Clifford Dunn, who were star runners. And Randy was one of the 2 players on the varsity that played 3 years varsity football as a starter. And I think with your senior year, Delano played Hanford in the semifinals. And Clovis was calling Hanford and saying, okay, when we play in the finals next week, we'll do this and this and that. And Delano had lost 3 games, I think, and Hanford was undefeated on the year. Then Randy and the team went up to Hanford, and, Nolan, you were there as a counselor, right, at Hanford? And Delano upset Hanford, and they had a guy, fullback named Jarrell Thomas, who later played for the Kansas City Chiefs and the LA Rams, and he was state heavyweight wrestling champion. He was built like a bulldozer, and I don't know how we beat them that game, but we beat them somehow. So, and Randy scored the only touchdown against Clovis. I think that was the biggest attendance in Delano history, like 8,000 fans. They wouldn't play in Delano, so they forced the game to be played at Bakersfield College Stadium. And I saw the pictures of our varsity starters, and it looked like 11 high school kids. Their starters, I thought, those guys look like they're professional football players. They all look like monsters. And so the score was 39-6, and the only touchdown of the game, Randy Powell returned a punt for a touchdown. So Don and Randy, come up here now, please.
Hello, my name's Don Noriel, and I coached at Delano High School for close to 30 years. And I don't need the microphone, but I'll use it anyway. A great pleasure to be introducing Randy Powell. Randy was a 4-sport athlete at Delano High School: football, basketball, baseball, and wrestling his senior year. He comes into Delano High School as a freshman, and I'm the head frosh soft football coach. And the very first day I looked to Jim Hyatt, the JV coach, and I said, he's yours. Take him now because he's too good for us. So he goes up to the JVs, and then he's a varsity football player for 3 years. Great job. He'll tell you more about his bio and everything. He played varsity baseball for me for 2 years. He was in the baseball program for 4 years. As far as I'm concerned, he's a great athlete. And in that whole group of guys, this whole group in here, you guys are the best group of guys that I've ever been associated with in high school athletics. I still coach baseball. I just finished my 55th year of coaching high school baseball. And this group, all these guys that were introduced today and others before them, they're the best as far as I'm concerned. And once a Tiger, always a Tiger.
Thank you, Coach.
You're welcome.
Played 4 years baseball with Coach Noriel, so wanted him to announce me tonight.
Yeah, swallow that like an ice cream.
All right. Can you hear me back there now? Yeah. If it'll stay up. That's all right. Well, first of all, thanks a lot for the committee, not only for introducing me, but all these athletes. These guys put in a lot of time and dedication, and it's a great thing. So glad to be here tonight. I'd like to just have a few people stand up. Ron Hill, right here. Alfred Wiley Boogie. Richard Almos. Mark Rivera. These guys all played with me, and I haven't seen any of them probably in 35 years. And they're all great athletes. So I just want to thank all of you guys for being here today. My time at Delano was really awesome. I came from Early Mart, and when I first came here, it was really hard because I was a newcomer. I was a good athlete, but not tested, proved to these coaches. So I had to work maybe a little bit harder than some of the people to get up there to get those first string spots. But eventually did it. At Delano High, I don't know how many of you have ever went to one of our football games, but there's always an announcer. And Mr. Robinson was my algebra teacher. And he was a really good teacher, but I was really good in algebra. And I would sit in the back and I'd talk. And so Mr. Robinson, he'd say, come up to the board and do this question, solve this problem. So I'd go up and solve the problem. But every time he would ask me, he goes, do you know how to solve this? And I'd go, yeah. So I'd go up and do it. He did it 3 times, I think. And then after that, every time I'd come out onto the football field, he'd call me Randy Rover Powell. That's how he announced me for 4 years. Coach Beck was probably the best coach I ever had. Played 4 years in college football, and by far he was the best coach. The guy knew more than just about anybody. Going back thinking about it after having all these coaches, he was phenomenal. So it was really great to have him and Waldo Stahl. And then a lot of you remember Joe Brumley. He was our equipment manager. He wrapped our ankles. He handed out our equipment. And I'll never forget my sophomore year when I was going on the varsity squad. They asked me, did I want to play? And I said, heck yeah. So they sent me up and they sent me into Joe. And he gave me these big old funky shoulder pads. I mean, they were heavy. And I go, heck, I can't wear those. He goes, well, why not? I said, because they're too heavy. I need some light ones. And he just threw the things down on the ground. And that, if you know Joe, he would just kind of lose it from time to time. And then he went back and got me this brand new pad. And he came out like he never did anything. He gave me the pads. He goes, get out there and get them. And then I think after I scored the first touchdown, he goes, hey, those pads work. I knew those would work for you. So all these guys that know Joe, he was quite a character. We loved him, when we played Clovis, Mr. Gerard talked a little bit about Clovis, but when we went to play him, we had 36 guys on the team, and they had their cheerleaders come in helicopters. They had 113 guys dressed out, and it was a massive team. I mean, it was almost shocking when we walked out there and saw them, They were psyching us out for sure. Well, we had great athletes. From 1972 to 1975, this town had the best athletes ever in this school's history. I can guarantee you that. Almost everyone that played with me went on to college, went on to play pro, just did a great job. But during that game, they were doing everything they could. They had all the running backs double teamed all night long, and they had big guys. All their guys across the line was probably 240 pounds. And so anyway, all night long we were having a heck of a time. And finally, Coach Beck called me over, and he goes, I think you can outrun him if you get to the outside. So I says, well, how am I going to get to the outside? He goes, let's run a reverse. So we ran a reverse, and I went 74 yards for the only touchdown of the night. And the reason I'm telling you that is because sometimes playing football can get you a job. Because later on, I went to Clovis Unified, trying to get a job as a teacher. And the reason I went there is because of that night, seeing all those great athletes out there on the field and having so many good athletes to pick from. So I ended up coaching in Clovis for 14 years. But what I was going to tell you is the first day that I went in to interview, Dr. Bishop was the associate superintendent. He interviewed me. He had just tons of questions. He wanted to know everything about everything. So the next day I had to go into Dr. Buchanan, which was the head of Clovis Unified. And so that night I stayed up till like 2 o'clock in the morning thinking, writing down everything I thought he might ask me. So I go into his office, and he has my paperwork there, and he looks at my paperwork, and he looks at me and he goes, Randy Powell, he goes, that sounds familiar. He goes, you went to one that ran that 74-yard touchdown on us in Clovis, and outrun all my guys. Yeah, that was me. He goes, great, sign this paper right here. And he gave me a job, So it's amazing how athletics can take you to, a little higher spot or somewhere you really want to be. And it did that for me. So, the other thing I want to say about Delano, it was multicultural. I've never had so many different nationalities, players on my team. And I have to say, by far, that was the best teams I ever had. We never hardly lost a football game. For 4 years. On the JV team, we hardly lost any, and on the varsity, we hardly ever lost any. And we were always at the top. So, you know, to have a career like that, I thank God every day that had the guys to play with and also my ability that I had. So, thank you. Thank you.
Well, I used to write a newspaper column in the Bakersfield Californian, but then they stopped running it, and I emailed California. I said, am I fired or laid off or what? I never have had a response, and it's been over a month, so I guess I'm fired.